We know that Joe Biden has some big priorities and big promises that he has to deliver on. And one of them has to do with the big Trump tax cut, effectively the piece of legislation that was passed over the last 4 years. Now, President Biden said during a presidential debate back in September that he was going to eliminate the Trump tax cuts. Yet he and his aides are committing to only a partial rollback of the law with their focus on provisions that help corporations and the very rich. It's a position that Mr. Biden held throughout the campaign and that he clarified in the September debate by promising to only partly repeal a corporate tax cut. He said, I'm going to get rid of the bulk of Trump's $2 trillion tax cut. And a lot of you may not like that, but I'm going to close loopholes like capital gains and stepped up basis. To give you a little bit of facts about what was changed in 2017, that law cut taxes for individuals and lowered the corporate tax rate to 21% from 35%, an amazing percentage drop there. He said he would raise income taxes to pre-Trump levels, that's Biden. Only at the top bracket, an increase to 39.6% from 37. He called for raising the corporate tax rate to 28% from 21, notably shorter than the 35 that preceded it, which that was the most obvious prediction ever at the time, that if it was ever raised, it ain't getting back up to what it was beforehand. So there's a lot here. He's made some big claims about the bulk of the tax cuts being repealed. But then when you look at the actual details, it really does cut down to a smaller and smaller portion of the overall tax cuts. I'm curious for both of you though, what do you think in the end is gonna make it through not only Biden's proposal, but actually being passed by Congress?
I'm not sure anything's going to make it through. I mean, that goes back to our filibuster question. If it's a question of relying on Republicans to reverse a tax cut, ain't going to happen. So maybe in a budget reconciliation, which is a special process through the budget where you can do a 50 vote environment, maybe you get something through. 28% is where Obama, frankly, wanted to take corporate taxes. So no surprise that that's where Biden wants to go. He said throughout the campaign that he didn't want to raise taxes on anyone making less than $400,000 a year. But the other side of that is that we have such an unequal society that you can actually raise quite a bit of money on people only making over $400,000 a year. And the ways that he talks about this by the estate tax or what's called on the right, the death tax, the inheritance tax. If you do changes to the corporate tax cut and also the thing around S corps, which are these pass-through corporations that individuals set up for themselves to give themselves a lower tax rate. So if you put those three things together, and then you also do what he talked about, I know the most boring thing in the world is step up in basis, but let me explain just real quick. So like when Sheldon Adelson died just a few weeks ago, every investment that he had, even if he bought it at 2 and it was now at 400, as he gives it to his heirs, it now is like it's at 400, as if they bought it at 400. In other words, all of the capital gains that he never realized in life get wiped out, get completely vanished as he passes that on to its heirs. It's a huge amount of money that is saved that way. It's a way that the rich give money to their descendants without, while avoiding tons of taxation. So you put that all together, and you are talking about trillions of dollars that you would raise. So while it's maybe not to the level that everybody might want, it is a lot of money, and it probably will be paired with a very large infrastructure program, because that's what Biden said is what he wants to do in the fall. He wants to pair taxes with infrastructure.
It's just, there's no real argument anymore for not having very high corporate taxes, right? I think there was a thesis maybe when Ford was employing 2 million people that if you let them keep more money, they'll hire more people. The big winners in our economy hardly employ anyone anymore. And so while yes, it's nice to get that 7% increase, I think like we definitely shouldn't be celebrating. We should look at even the logic of letting wealthy people or corporations hold on to even a significant share of their profits or tax or having low taxes at all. Like, what is the core value in the 21st century of these people having more resources at this point? I think there was an argument at one point that sure, they could provide more jobs if they were able to, hold on to more of their capital. Now it's all stock buybacks, and Instagram, when it was bought for $1 billion, had 20 people working at it. These companies don't employ people.
Right. I mean, let me agree with Xander that there's no real argument that we shouldn't go back to the state of being in 2016. It's not like that was a hellscape for corporations. They weren't able to make any money or anything like that. So I completely agree with that. And progressives should push as much as they possibly can to maximize the amount of money that you can gain from that, because obviously it can be put to good use. All I'm saying is that because we have such an unequal society, that even a cutoff as high as $400,000 a year still yields a ton of money.
Although, at least based on the estimates that I've seen, not enough necessarily to account for the programs that Biden has said those repeals will pay for.
Which we don't have to pay for, by the way. I mean, right? There's no need that we actually have to, do the green eye shade and line up every dollar that's coming in on taxes with every dollar going out. We've seen in the pandemic that we've put $3 trillion out there without having to pay for it, and this is a salutary thing that Democrats have stopped with their love of budget hawkery. That they're no longer saying that everything has to be paid for. So that's a good thing, I would say.
That is a good thing. And then let's also, sorry, Xander.
No, this is just the downside of being stuck with someone like Biden. This is it. This is what you fight for. That's what your North Star looks like, is 28%. I think you're right. It was Obama's number. It's probably his North Star as well. Meantime, every retail business in the United States learned how to utilize automation and won't be bringing back the same amount of people. There are going to be less and less, not only winners, obviously, because the corporations are getting bigger, but there's going to be less and less people even working for those winners. And so we kind of have these dual freight trains of climate change, but also automation bearing down upon us that requires us to build safety nets where people can live dignified lives, even when they're not employed. And it just feels like, we're playing by the old rules here. And that's why I worry most about kind of, I talked about Pelosi and Schumer at the top of the hour and Biden too, is that they're just not responding to those threats in the way that is becoming increasingly obvious that we need to respond to them.
Well, yeah, I mean, if the leadership across, three areas is going to be Biden and Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, the fact that you're playing by the old rules seems like a literal truth. You're going to be doing that. And let's bear in mind, by the way, in terms of that, let's that 28%, but pre-cut. The overall percentage of the nation's tax burden that was taken up by corporate taxes had already been falling as a share for literally decades, and then they decided, let's cut it in half, basically.
Right.
So now we're not even getting.
No corporation pays 28%. No corporation paid 35%. That is a nominal rate. That is not the effective tax rate. And so there's an argument to be made that the rate, the nominal rate, is important, but almost or just as important, if not more so, is getting rid of all the loopholes that allow corporations to dramatically lower themselves well beyond that 28% rate. Because as we know, scores of corporations paid zero in taxes throughout the last several years because of all the loopholes they were able to enjoy.
Well, that's true, David, but that only includes some of the wealthiest companies in the history of our planet. So should we really be so worried about it? Yeah, but let's also, if we're, and this will probably be what we close out the hour on, if we're talking about the unfortunate things with having Biden as president, like sure, he might take back some of those Trump era tax cuts, but some of the conversations we were starting to have during the primary about the possibility of a wealth tax. I mean, we're miles away from something like that at this point, and it's unlikely that any amount of pressure is going to get Biden, in line with that. It's possible that with a strong progressive president putting sort of persistent pressure on the Senate, it would still be it would be a huge battle and maybe impossible, but at least it would have been a possibility. And that's one of the many things that we have unfortunately lost out on.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.